Hey guys, this is Dr. John Michael Salvato, your organic living and peak performance coach, and this is day 31 in our 200-day Mindshift mastery program. And congratulations if you've made it this far. Certainly, that is an exceptional accomplishment and speaks to your dedication and your vision and sense of purpose. Today. The topic, it just always amazes me how these topics seem to fall at the right place and the right time in so many people's lives. I mean, people tell me all the time, John Michael, that was, I really needed to hear that today, or wow, what a timely, teaching to have to consider when I'm going through whatever they're going through in their lives. And for me, this topic today certainly came at a very timely point. It was part of the curriculum and it was planned for today. But the topic is that your impact is more important and worth more than your income. And certainly in the light of what happened this past weekend in Orlando with the tragic shooting of over 100 people at a nightclub. The message of your impact really mattering really struck a chord with me because, as many of you already know, I lost 3 friends, 2 of whom I was closer with, 1 of whom I was very close with, and the third of whom I've only known for about a little over a year, I guess. And excuse me, and we really became close about 9 or 10 weeks ago when I started using Snapchat, because now our conversations were no longer just conversations on Facebook, but they were actually video clips that we were sending back and forth to one another every day. And he was, he's a couple years younger than me, about 20 years younger than me, almost, and just was a really respectful, kind, loving kid, and he brightened my day. And so when you look at, I was thinking when I was preparing for this last night, and I was thinking about the fact that Stanley and I have known one another for a year, but we really became close in the last, we'll call it 90 days, and what an impact he had on my life. I mean, I looked forward when I would open Snapchat to seeing what crazy little 10-second nugget I was going to get from this young man who lived down in Claremont, Florida, down in actually not too far from Amanda, and the impact that he had on my life was as powerful as it was because he brought value. He brought himself to that conversation. And so I think the idea, the lesson really for us is to really consider the fact that, we live in a world and a life in which there are no guarantees, there are no promises of tomorrow. And so that's why I consider it so important that the fundamentals of building a successful business and a successful life starts with being a servant leader, cultivating that servant leader's heart. And a servant leader always seeks to bring value to the moment. They always seek to bring the very best that they possibly can, whatever that need happens to be. And that was certainly certainly the way that each one of those friends that we lost lived their lives. Frankie Velasquez, who we knew as Jimmy, was a brilliant display or visual merchandiser. He did displays for retail stores, and always brought the very best of his creativity to what he did. My friend Eddie was a brand ambassador for his travel company, and just was so beloved by the community throughout Florida and throughout the country. And we met at several different events years and years ago, and just really connected. And it didn't surprise me to learn that he lost his life trying to save his boyfriend from being shot, and was shot in the back as a result, and died in the hospital a short while later. So these examples that struck home for me made me stop and take inventory of my own life and say, what do I do on a daily basis to have an impact? If I were to be shot or hit by a car or just drop dead for whatever reason tomorrow, would people feel the impact of that loss the way that I do my friends? And I think it's a question we can ask ourselves, each of us ask ourselves every day, is what can I do today to bring value to every transaction? Not just my business, not just Facebook posts, not just social media, or not just our relationships at home, but every transaction, every interaction with every person. And I call those transactions because that's what they really are. And when we begin to look at every interaction with a person on this planet as a transaction, then first of all, our business begins to do better, because now we've stopped treating business like this little thing that we do. Transactions are not something we do to somebody. They should be something we do with and for somebody. And then if we treated everything in life as a transaction, you wouldn't go to a store that asked you for $20 for a gallon of milk, because there wouldn't be value in that transaction. And so when we expect to engage somebody in any part of the 6 dimensions of wellness in our lives, then we should make sure that we're not asking for $20 for a gallon of milk. We should make sure that the value that we're bringing is worth the price of that transaction, is worth the exchange. We talked last week about the law of equivalent exchange, and that's what today is really all about. It's about expanding that beyond the concept of money and looking at what matters most in our lives. And what matters most is the impact you have on people. Some of the things that have meant the most to me, and this group is certainly proof of that, aren't about the times when my income just increased. It's about the times I was able to leverage that income to do good for other people. I'm so much more satisfied when my commission check comes, not just to be able to pay my medical bills. I'm certainly grateful for that. Not just to be able to pay my living expenses. I'm grateful for that. But to be able to pay the rent for a couple other people that we've been paying the rent for the last year, to be able to help buy groceries for somebody who's an elderly person and just lives by herself. She's widowed and can't do it on her own. Those are the kinds of things that mean more to me, that bring more value, more worth to my life, to my existence, to the reason I get up and put in 12 or 13 or 14 hours a day at the things that I do. Certainly not my business, but everything in general. And that's what I encourage you to do, is find those things that make an impact. If you do that, everything else falls in place. That sounds like pie in the sky. It sounds like a pipe dream. But I promise you, I've not only seen it in my life, because if it were just in my life, I'd say maybe it was a coincidence. But I've seen it in the lives of every single successful person I know, that when you focus on bringing value, when you focus on having an impact, the money takes care of itself. The time freedom takes care of itself. Your life becomes richer and fuller, and certainly it does become a little bit busier in some ways, but you get that time freedom back, because then you have the freedom to make a choice. And when you're doing things that you're passionate about, you're going to be busy. Successful people stay busy, but they also have that freedom to be able to take time off when they need to take time off, to be able to say, I need to step aside and do something. This next couple of weeks, I'm working with a business partner of mine whom I love dearly, and helping with a project that's outside of the scope of our business, and to have the freedom to be able to help them on that project, because it's something I truly believe in, something that they're going to use to have an impact on society, to have an impact in this person's case on women's lives. So how could I put that second to the idea of making more money? Because if I make more money, that's just money. That's just that piece of paper that we use for exchange. If I'm not bringing value to somebody's life, that money is pointless, because there's not going to be value in my life if I don't have that impact on others. So Today we only have Ita on the call with us live, so this is going to be this could be an exciting conversation, because sometimes I find these smaller groups become more intimate, and we get to really talk at a little bit deeper level. So, what were your thoughts about today's topic, Ita, and kind of how it ties in with really with everything we've talked about since day one for the last 30 days? But what are your thoughts?
Well, just listening to you now and thinking about it earlier, it, I mean, when there's lots of areas in life, like you brought out on the 6 areas of wellness, there's lots of areas in life that we can have an impact on people, that we can bring something new to the people in the world. There's I mean, as you were talking, it sort of struck me that and as you brought out the servant leader, being a servant leader, it's when it's a very unselfish person. If you're not selfishly thinking about yourself when you're interacting with other people, that's when you can bring an impact to people's lives. If you are thinking about yourself and your work and your money and your job and something you just left and the children and the husband you just had an argument with or something like that, you're not in that moment with that person. So that you're interacting with. So you can't bring anything to them when when your mind is just selfishly wrapped up in you, which sadly a lot of the world is. So there is that few people out there that can bring, um, with unselfish people that do bring an impact to a lot of people that need that unselfishness out there, because it's such a selfish world that we live in that it's quite rare. So that struck me when you said again the servant leader. I mean, that just keeps jumping out at me, because all my training and all my business up until now has to be, you have to be a leader, you have to be a leader. And if it's not in you to be a leader, it's very hard. So when you brought that out in the last, how many weeks has it been now, about being a servant leader, that so jumped out at me, because I tried so much in secular jobs at school and in different areas to be a leader, and if it's not innate in you, it is very hard to do that. But that's not where you're sitting. That's
You,
what I just
I
pick
think
up from it.
I think that you bring up a good point, and my belief has always been that the only authentic leadership is servant leadership. And so I think that when so many organizations and companies and programs say you've got to be a leader, you've got to be a leader, what they don't understand is that that leadership, particularly in the secular world, is recognized by quite often by the degree of aggressiveness, the degree of sort of pushiness, and sort of those things that I think of as not being essential qualities of a real leader. And so many people say, "Oh, I could never be a leader because it's not inborn, for me to be a leader. That's not my personality type. That's not who I am." And yet, when I share with them what servant leadership means, almost straight across the board, people say, "Well, I have those qualities. That's why I never felt I could be a leader, because serving other people is more important to me. Putting others first is more important to me." And when I hear that, I'm always encouraged, because I know that every person that hears that message is going to be inspired to become a servant leader. But it's also a little bit sad, because it lets me see just how off focus or off point so many organizations in the world, whether they're small businesses, home businesses, Fortune 500 corporations, because they don't understand what real leadership, what authentic leadership is all about. When you think about the greatest leaders that this world has ever known, who were leaders, not dictators, not monarchs, not sort of the people who have absolute power, but the people who are absolutely empowering others. every single one of those people were servant leaders. It's I liked what my friend Amparo Titmus said several weeks ago, about a month ago now, when she said, don't make the focus trying to find customers for your product. Make the focus trying to find product for your customers. And so if we just take that word customers out, because it's not everyone here is selling something, per se, but stop trying to find customers for your product, but instead try and find product for those people with whom you interact on a daily basis. And that's why when I start to see people who suddenly start to get enrollments, they suddenly start to get customers in their business, they suddenly start to increase engagement, it's invariably because a light switch went on in their heads and they started to deliver value. They started to be perceived by those prospective customers and those prospective reps as leaders, because they are. You are a leader, innately, Ita, but you're a leader based on the concept of servant leadership. You're not a leader who's going to be pushy and do the 3-foot rule and hand out business cards to every single person, whether they're interested or not, or say, come to my home party, come to my home party. You're a leader because you try and find the need in a person's life that you can be of service. And if that person's, need is not an area where you could be of service, if somebody were, I can't even think of a good example with your company where you wouldn't be able to help them in some way. Let's say somebody was perfectly healthy, as if that person ever existed. They were perfectly healthy. They were financially prosperous, and what they were really looking for was a good travel agent. Well, then you wouldn't want to talk to them about body wraps or about home decor or anything else, because that's not their need. That's not what they're looking for. You would say, well, I happen to know so-and-so who's a travel agent that we used, or maybe you wouldn't say anything if you didn't have a good referral for them. That's real leadership. There are people that I talk to on a daily basis that I send along to other friends who might happen to be in the network marketing industry, because that's what they're looking for. And they aren't a good fit for my business model, or they for whatever reason. If I feel like somebody's a good fit, I had somebody the other day who said, I just left my company and I'm going to miss this particular product. And I said, well, I've got to tell you, there are 2 companies out there that sell that particular product that I think do an exceptional job with that product. I don't like all of their products, but I do know that particular product you're looking for is exceptional in this company. So if you don't want to do business with your previous company, here's a place where you can go. And I just gave them the names of 2 or 3 of my friends and said, my recommendation is connect with my friends, see who you have a connection with, and take it from there. And I always encourage people when I do that to leave me out of the equation, because I want their engagement with that person to be clean, and not that okay, John Michael told me that you sell so and so, and so so I'm contacting you. I want them to get to know that person. Let that person and them connect on some level, and they may become, in some instances in the past, they connected with a couple people and they said, this is really insane. I love all of them that you sent me to, so I can't make a decision. And and in the meantime, I found it at such and such a store. But now I have 3 really good friends in my life, and there's no telling, somewhere down the road we may do business together. That's what it's all about. I mean, that's having an impact on people's lives. And so I'm going to keep it short today, since it is just the 2 of us. And I want to thank you, Ita, I just want to thank you for being here, for showing up. I mean, that's 90% of the process, is consistently showing up, regardless of whether you had to go through 10 devices to get there, compared to some people who give up when they just can't get it on because their browser was slow that day. So thank you again. And for everybody, thank you who's watching this. Thank you, because you're participating whether you're here live or not. And I want every single one of you to know. I think it was easier today having just Ita here than it was having multiple people, because Um, the every time I think I'm all cried out after this weekend, I get a surprise and the tears come again. And I just want each and every one of you to know, with all of my heart, that you've had an impact on my life. And so, impact is more than income, since I think there's probably not many people in the group whose income has yet arrived at where my income has been. And yet, I want you to know, I want you to understand, your impact on me was worth millions of dollars, and will continue to be worth millions of dollars, because this is a journey that we're taking together. So do that. I encourage you to do that in the world around you. Spend time today and for the next week, really bringing mindfulness to every transaction, every interaction with every person, and ask yourself, what can you do? Get in the habit, when you're meeting somebody, when you're talking to somebody, when you're connecting with somebody that you already know, to just pause for a second and say, what can I do to bring value to this moment? Like Ita said, that means stepping outside of all of your other concerns and letting your focus be on that person. And I promise you, when you do that, every aspect of your life becomes better. So that, when the day comes that we see our final sunset, and my prayer is that be, many, many, many sunsets away. But that when we see our final sunset, that we could have the kind of impact that my friends had on my life and on the lives of so many others. And as I read the stories in the news about so many of the other people, so many of them so very young, who were killed this past weekend, and I hear the impact that they had on people's lives. At the age of 22 was the youngest that was killed. 28, 35, 40 years old. I pray that when my time comes, that I might have had that kind of impact on half as many lives, because those people were clearly examples for us all. So thank you, Ita, for being here today, and thank you guys for watching. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And hopefully this world will be a little brighter place by tomorrow. Love you guys and appreciate you. Namaste.
Thank you, John Michael. Bye.